Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be doing a review of The Adventures of Amina Sirafi by SA Chakraborty. Now this was an e-arc, so thank you NetGalley for approving my request, and I was so psyched when I got approved for this book because I love SA Chakraborty. I think her writing is absolutely exceptional. I think she's quite underrated actually. I don't think enough people talk about her, especially in my sphere of, booktube. I read a lot of grim, dark and darker fantasy, and I just don't think she gets enough credit, to be honest. I don't think she's grim dark at all, but she does have quite morally grey characters. I think she's an absolute master at doing really effective world building, vivid world building, and I just think she has a wonderful ability to tell a story in a really effective manner, and I just don't think she gets enough credit for it. I really don't. Like, I love David Bad trilogy. I don't think enough people talk about it. I think this book in particular seems to be getting a lot of hype, which I'm really happy about, and you'll see with this review that it's very deserved hype because my gosh, this book is absolutely excellent. It's so good. I read it pretty slowly because I read the David Bad trilogy in like a week, all 3 books. And I regret it because it's one of those series that should be enjoyed slowly. It's a ride and you want to embrace and enjoy the ride slowly but surely. I didn't. I read it in a week, and as much as I loved doing that, I kind of regret it because I feel like maybe I could have taken more from the book. It's definitely a series that I will reread in the coming years. I learnt from that and I decided to read Amina Sirafi a lot more slowly and enjoy it a lot more slowly. So without further ado, let's jump into a very quick summary about this book. Now, this book is about a pirate or a retired pirate called Amina Sirafi. She's about 40 years old and she has a child. A woman comes to her and tells her that her granddaughter has been kidnapped, and if she doesn't help her, she will essentially kill her family. So she has no choice but to go on this adventure to find this girl. Now, what did I love about this book? Obviously, I loved everything about it, but the first thing that I really loved about this book is Chakraborty's writing. I think she just tells a story so beautifully. It's so fluid. It just flows so nicely. It's like a nice cup of tea in the evening, You just want to feel satisfied. You want to feel like you're in it for the ride, and that's exactly how it feels. Her writing didn't need improving from the David Bad trilogy, but I feel like it's a little bit tighter, which I'll always take. And I just think she tells the story absolutely wonderfully. Now, the story is told from the perspective of Amina Sirafi, being told in retrospect. So we know that Amina is still alive because she is retrospectively telling the story to somebody who is documenting it. But it does make it feel very intimate. It does make it feel very raw in a way because we are just getting it directly from Amina in a way that just feels just very kind of conversational, and I really love that way of telling a story. The next thing that I loved was the characters. There's such a wide range of characters here. I absolutely loved Amina. Loved it. Very rare to see an older fantasy character, never mind a female fantasy character, never mind a Muslim female fantasy character. It was just so good. Amina is so relatable in so many ways. I love the fact that, she's this ex-pirate, she's a mother, she loves adventure, but she also knows that she needs to give stability to her home. And yet she, even though, she has a daughter, she still has this desire to be this adventurer that she has always been and always will be. And I'm so glad that the author decided to embrace that with this character and not make her choose between her daughter and her previous life. It shows that actually, yes, we do have to make sacrifices, but you can have both things. They don't have to necessarily always be at odds with each other. And that was something that I really appreciated. For a minute, I was a bit worried that, she was going to have to make a choice that she didn't want to make. And often in fantasy, women have to give up what they want to do for their family. And I'm just so glad that she did not make our character have to make this choice, and to show to us that you can have it both ways. I just loved it. That is the message that we want to be giving out, people. There's a really wide range of secondary characters. We have Timbu, Delilah and Majid. They form her kind of crew on her ship, and they're just really funny characters. They've all got their specialties. Like Timbu is he's kind of like her deputy on the ship. Then we have Delilah, who's the one who's she's like the chemist. She does all the potions and weapons and stuff like that, like bombs and stuff like that. Then we have Majid, who is the navigator, super smart guy, like really good at like navigating really like tough waters and stuff like that. And they're just, the four of them together just work really well together. They're all very different personalities, different religions, different cultures, and yet it works. And it kind of shows, you know, when you have this bubbling pot of people, you can make it really work in a harmonious way. And I love that message as well. And then we also had another kind of couple of other characters. We had Raksh, Marhana, I think that's how you say it, and Dunya as well. And I'm not going to say anything beyond that, but they're all just characters that were pretty fleshed out. They felt very individual. And, you know, they're people whose names you will remember because they're very unique in their own way. And I just love that even though we had such a broad cast of characters, they all felt fleshed out and they all felt individualistic, which I really appreciate. Because often when you're reading a book with so many secondary cast characters, it can just kind of feel like, you know, you can call them all the same name and that's it. But I didn't get that at all with this book. And I think Amina's interactions with all the characters were just super satisfying to read because she's just such a sarky, funny person. She kind of reminds me of myself sometimes. Like, she's very serious when she wants to be. I'm maybe a little bit more serious than her, but she's just really like funny as well. Like, she'll try, if she's like in an awkward situation, she'll try to use humor to get out of it. Whereas I don't think I would do that, but she does that, and it's just so good. She kind of reminds me of Jack Sparrow in some ways. They're different, but quite similar in some ways. The next thing I really love about this is the world building. I think Chakraborty, as I said at the start, is just so good at world building. There's such a rich kind of lore, and I just love the fact that this is set in so many kind of different locations, and it feels so rich and it feels so familiar to me. Now, a lot of the places that she mentions are in Africa or Southeast Asia or in the Middle East. And it's just so nice to hear like familiar places and for it not to be seen as like exotic. You know, like I feel like in a lot of Western fantasy books, if you hear about India, it's like this really exotic, faraway place. But like in this, it's like, it's just India. You can go get your spices, your gold, whatever you want from India. And it's just so nice. Like, it's so nice to read a book where people who are not Western are like not perceived as exotic. Like, oh, I can't hammer this point home enough. Anybody who is not, you know, from Europe or the Americas or and maybe let's just say North America and Canada and from the UK, you know, I've read a lot, most of the fantasy that I've read is that. And often when you are from, you know, the kind of east part of the world, you are seen, or they are seen as a very exotic thing, a thing to be taken, a thing to be colonized. And yet we don't get this in this book because the characters themselves are part of that world. And it was just so wonderful to read, and it was so satisfying as somebody who, yes, I am British, obviously I have a British accent, but I am from South Asia originally. That's where my family is originally from. It just felt so nice to be heard and to feel like I had a voice. This is why diverse stories matter. Like, I really don't want to make this into some big diversity thing, but this is why diverse stories matter, because there is nothing nicer, at least for me as a British person who is of South Asian heritage, to read story about people who look like me and come from places like me and speak the same languages as me. You know, I'll keep reading my Western fantasy, obviously, I still love it, but there's nothing quite like reading something that makes you feel like you're at home, and that's what this story felt like. And I just went on a massive tangent. So I just loved everything about the world building. I just loved that this world felt very familiar and just felt so, it just felt like home. Just felt like home. So thank you, Chakraborty, for doing that. The world building was phenomenal, and the kind of an extension of that, you know, the kind of central cultural influence of this book is Islamic culture. Now, the main character is a Muslim. A lot of the characters are Muslim. We have some characters who are Hindus and Jews and Christians as well. Like, there's a really nice like melting pot. But the main character, Amina, is a Muslim, and so she recites passages from the Quran in the book. And she will say Arabic words, and she'll talk about Arabic food, and there'll be references to Arabic law and Islamic law, and it's just wonderful. She'll talk about historical events in the Middle East, in Africa. She talks about what happened in Jerusalem, in the Crusades. Like, there's just lots of like very familiar references, and like I said, it kind of brings back that feeling of like you're coming home and you're surrounded by people who are similar to you in that regard, and it just feels really lovely. For me, at least, I wasn't expecting it. I really was not expecting it. I mean, the beginning of the book starts with a passage from the Quran, and it's just very like heartwarming to see that she wrote this book in this way, and to see that also publishers gave her that support to be able to write what was authentic to her, because I would have been really upset if that hadn't have been the case. But then again, she is like a phenomenal author, and she's had a lot of success, so she's very you know, lucky to also be in that position to be able to tell that story in the first place. And that is obviously her due to her own credit, because she's such a phenomenal author. The world, I can't just bang on about the world enough, because it was just perfect. Honestly, it was just, she just captured everything perfectly. It felt very authentic, felt very real, and I think a lot of people who come from those parts of the world or who follow one religion or another, they're going to feel very, and whether it's just culturally as well, they're going to feel really at home when they read the story, because it's so beautiful. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the themes. There's some really interesting thematic work in this book. You know, there's this whole idea of, you know, the kind of place of religion and spirituality, kind of fantastical elements. I just thought it was quite cool. I kind of quite like that crossover between the spiritual and religion. You can definitely be religious and be spiritual, but often they are shown as very separate things, even though that is not always the case. And then there's also this idea of the role of, you know, the matriarch, and, you know, what role does she ultimately have to play? Does she just have to be at home and look after the children, or can she have a bigger role in society as well? Then there's also this whole kind of idea of religious tension as well. A big part of this book is this idea of the Muslims against the Christians, which is something that has been played on for many, many years in movies and TV and books and theatre as well. And, you know, I think that's particularly represented by the villain of this story, who is a Frank. I really like the way that she presented it. I don't think she ever made it about Christians versus Muslims, which I really appreciated, because I think religion is often used as a weapon. It's a very effective weapon, but often a lot of the people who are leading these wars aren't actually particularly religious people. They're just using religion as an excuse to further their own agenda. I think she represents that really effectively in this story, because she has people who can work together, who come from different religions and different cultures, and it works really well. I mean, Amina's own crew is like that, and yet it's often presented that that can't be achievable, and yet it clearly is. So I loved everything about this book. Like, I don't even think, because I've been gushing just so much, I don't even think I've fully done justice to how wonderful this book is. I gave it 5 stars. Another book that I wish I could give 1,000,000 stars. The only thing that gave me a little bit of issue was the first chapter. I did not like the way the book started. I don't know why, it just did not resonate with me. But then after that, it just very quickly, I was like, oh my gosh, this book is perfect for me. And I feel like I read it at the right time as well. I was really in the mood for something like this, and Chakraborty delivered on every single front. It's immaculately written. The cultural, the religious, the architectural, you know, all of the things that go into building a world were just flawlessly executed. The character is interesting and dynamic, and they have a lot of depth and layers. The story itself, I think, just has a lot of impact, regardless of who you are. But I think particularly if you are somebody whose heritage is beyond, you know, what we typically get in fantasy, I think it's going to resonate even more with you. And I think if you're somebody who is from, you know, like the US or the UK or central parts of Europe, then I think you're going to learn something new. And I think that in itself is also really great, because she's sharing a lot of knowledge about parts of the world that most people think they know, but they don't actually know, because they don't pick up history books and read about it. So anyway, I'm going to stop there, because I could just keep going. But I love this book. It was just so good. And Shannon Chakraborty, just thank you so much for writing such a wonderful story. We got that with David Bad Trilogy, but I feel like this one even more so, like, really captured my heart. And I think it's going to capture a lot of people's heart. And I just cannot wait to see how this trilogy develops. Yeah, I just thank you. Thank you so much. Nobody's going to have read this book. It's not out yet. I know quite a few people have got e-arcs, so if you have read your e-arc or you're reading your e-arc currently, hit me down below. If you've got any questions, hit me down below. But just go pre-order this book right now. I've pre-ordered mine already, and I cannot wait for it to arrive. And yeah, thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe as always, take care, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.